and he's going to die. It looks like he's going to die. And then the moon starts coming up over the horizon. And he says, "Dear God, whose name I do not know, thank you for my life. I forgot how big life is. Thank you. Thank you for my life." And life is so big. And it wants us to wake up and witness it and partake in it. And that is the first step toward living in the middle of the hub. The second path to the hub, I believe, is balance. Balance. Finding balance. And there's from the Siddhartha, it says, "One day as Siddhartha was sitting under a Bodhi tree on the bank of a river, he saw on the opposite bank a fisherman teaching a young boy how to play the lute. 'If you tighten the strings too much,' the fisherman explained, 'they will snap, and if you leave them too loose, they won't play. If they are tuned to the right point, you will make music.' Hearing these words, Siddhartha knew at once that to achieve wisdom, the strings of one's life should be neither too tight nor too loose." And that's finding balance. And when we find balance, we kind of, it's so amazing. In our lives, are we too tight or are we too loose? And it's finding that right balance. And yoga is a perfect example of this. Yoga is totally misunderstood. Most Americans, anyway, think that it's about postures and getting strong and six-pack abs. And when in fact, the word for yoga in Sanskrit is union. It's the union. It's the balance between the mind, the body, and the spirit. So it's finding that balance. And if we're out of balance, what's called for is going to get loud in our life. There's a wonderful story of a priest in New York taking confessions, and he noticed that the prostitutes talk about nothing but their quest for spirituality, peace, and God. And he noticed that his fellow priests talk about nothing but the temptations of the flesh and sex. Isn't that interesting? So once again, out of balance, out of balance. So when people ask me, "Why did you come back from your sailing trip?" And I always just say, "Well, I kind of ran out of money." Well, the truth is, I was out of balance. As tight as I was when I was with GE, by the time I sailed from San Diego down through the Panama Canal and then up over to Florida a couple of years ago. And I found myself just so loose, like not really paying attention to my business and work back here. And since I've come back, I feel like I've made that right balance. And life will always show us, when we go too far. So it's kind of like water. There's a wonderful quote here from Sri Nisargadatta, and he says, "Love says, I am everything. Wisdom says, I am nothing. Between these two, my entire life flows." And what I think he's saying is balance. Balance. And there's nothing like water to help us feel balance. Does anybody notice that when you float? And you feel like everything in the pool, and you feel like nothing at the same time. It's the strangest experience. Well, I went on a retreat down in Mexico about 7 years ago. And in the morning we meditate, and then we do yoga, and then we have this great vegetarian lunch, and then the afternoon was ours, and you could do anything you want. And there was this natural occurring mineral stream that would flow through the complex into their pool and then out. And every single day, like the first day, I'm like, "Oh, I guess I'll try the pool." So I get to the pool, and I get one of those little floaty noodles, and I put it under my feet and under my neck, and I just kind of float around. And the next day, I'm like, "I got to get to that pool. That was something else, that pool. I got to get to the pool." And by the third day, I'm obsessed with the pool. I got to get to the pool. And so by Friday, and I'm Irish and pale. I don't lay out. And I'm out there for like 5 hours just floating. And finally, I asked them, "What's that mineral that's in the water?" And they said, "Oh, lithium. Heavy dose of." So that's one way to find balance, I guess. But I thought it was water. But anyway, I didn't know it was actually lithium. But anyway, the point here is when we're in balance, we feel the love in us. It feels like we're everything, and we feel like nothing all at the same time. And that's when you know you're in perfect balance in life. All right? But when we're out of balance, then we're back on that reel of highs, that wheel, the rim of highs and lows in life. So thirdly, and most importantly, I would say the path to the hub is all about self-acceptance and surrender. Many of us think that if we can just get life right, if we can just fix life good enough, then we'll have finally made it. Anybody have that thought? Yeah? Did you ever notice it? It's kind of like whack-a-mole. When you get that one thing fixed, another one pops up. And it's one damn thing after another, isn't it? It's like you never quite get perfect on that rim of life. It's so seductive and such a waste of time for us to try to find perfection on the rim of life. It's not where perfection is to be found, and yet we keep working on it, don't we? And it's not about fully engage our life, but striving to find perfection on the rim will never, ever happen. It's going to be from moving our identity from that rim to that hub and identifying there. That is where we're going to find our perfection. That is where we're going to find our balance and our union with life. And life will never be perfect on the rim. I was thinking about when was life absolutely perfect for me, and I said, I had a full head of hair, all my joints worked perfectly, and I was 179 pounds for one day back in 1989. And ever since that time, life has not been perfect, and yet my crazy mind thinks you got to get back to perfect, and it doesn't. If you haven't noticed it, we keep aging. I'll be lying at the bank. I'll be like, who is that guy up in the monitor? Like, that old guy. So things keep changing, but it's about our identification. So life is always perfect in the hub, always. And the trick here is self-acceptance. Now, I've had this strange thought for about 6 months, and I think it's true. I'm starting to notice that my awareness has gone before my karma. All right, so I'm aware of what I should and shouldn't do, and yet my karma seems to have to play out. Does that make sense or not? Yeah? So I'm aware I shouldn't be doing this, and yet I can't seem to stop myself from hanging out with with that client, or I know I shouldn't be working with these people, and yet I find myself, and I'm not done until I'm done. All right, things have to play out in life. So what I'm saying here is, we can have the awareness, and the beautiful thing is that's where we're going in life. But in the meantime, self-acceptance. We're going to get there when we get there. We're going to finish off that thing, whatever that thing that's difficult in our life. It will finish off when it finishes off in its own time. So that's where that acceptance comes, that self-acceptance. And there's a season for each of these. There's a wonderful story of a student coming to the master, and he says, Master, and here's a perfect example of self-acceptance. Master, before enlightenment, I noticed that you were depressed. You talked about being depressed. Now that you're enlightened, you've achieved enlightenment. Are you still depressed? And the master thought about it. He goes, yes, I'm still depressed. I just don't seem to mind. Self-acceptance, all right? That would be karma still doing its thing while identified as something else. So I say accept yourself. I say surrender and get happy first. Then go get that happiness first. Find that hub first. Find that immovable, immortal part of ourselves. Then, once you got that, go make your million. Go lose weight. Go, get hair plugs. Whatever you want to do. It doesn't matter. It's all on the rim of life. It doesn't matter. But if you find that hub first, and seek ye first the kingdom of heaven, that's what that is find that hub in your life. What is that? And everything else will take care of itself. So, just lastly, before I close here, what does surrender look like? Well, when you're identified with the hub and all hell just starts breaking loose on the rim, you keep it all in perfect perspective, and you can even laugh at the absurdity of life when you're in perfect balance there. Marcus Aurelius said, death smiles at us all, but all a man can really do is smile back. And for me, that's the full identification in the hub while smiling at, one more thing falls off the rim, you're just getting over. So perfect example that I'll close with here is my father passed away about 3-4 years ago, and he had a brain tumor, and it paralyzed half of his face and body. So he's kind of slurred and had a lisp. And so it was New Year's Eve, and my sister and my dad lived out east, so I'm visiting, and my sister had some party I didn't want to go to. So I went over to my dad's condo, and we're just kind of sitting there, and he's like, let's have a beer. So we're having a beer, and we're watching them drop the ball for the New Year's thing, and it's Dick Clark. And has anybody seen Dick Clark? So Dick Clark's had this horrible stroke, and he has very bad, he can barely speak. And so my dad and I are watching, and they say, they bring Dick Clark out, and they say, okay, Dick, one more time for old time's sake, just, let us have, New Year's. So Dick's like, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Happy New Year, everybody. And the big New Year's. My dad, without skipping a beat, puts his beer down. He goes, Jesus Christ, I can do better than that. And for me, that's the epitome of being identified in the hub, and you just laugh at what's going on in the wheel because, that's letting go. That's letting go. So, in closing, I wish each of you a life at the hub of the wheel, one that is filled with constant, total amazement, because it is amazing, and life is immense, and it's all yours. It's all yours. Amen.